not bad at friendship. You are just noticing something most people never admit. The smarter you get, the less chasing people actually works, and the more it starts to feel vaguely humiliating. Quick thing before I pull that apart. We are building toward our next subscriber milestone, and your subscription genuinely helps this channel reach the right people. And if this hits a nerve, tap like too, because the algorithm only pushes content that gets that early signal. Okay, back to the uncomfortable part. If you have ever looked at your contacts, seen dozens of names, and still felt socially underfed, you have felt this. If you have ever initiated, checked in, planned, followed up, and then quietly stopped because you realized you were carrying the entire relationship on your spine, you have felt this. And it is not just adult life is busy. That is the surface story people tell because the deeper story is socially expensive. Here is what is actually happening. Intelligence changes the cost structure of friendship, not your worth. The cost structure. You start pricing interactions differently because your brain is better at pattern detection, better at forecasting, and less tolerant of ambiguous returns. Most people never calculate friendship. Intelligent people do it automatically, and then they feel guilty about it because society romanticizes connection as something that should be effortless. So when an intelligent person stops chasing friendships, it is usually not because they became cold. It is because they became accurate. Let me show you the first mechanism. It is called prediction error, and it runs your dopamine system. Dopamine is not a pleasure chemical. It is a learning signal. It spikes when reality is better than expected, and it drops when reality is worse than expected. Friendship, when it is healthy, is basically a steady stream of small positive prediction errors. You expect neutrality, you get warmth. You expect silence, you get a message. You expect a boring hangout, you get a moment that lands. Now notice what happens when you become the initiator. You start expecting that warmth only when you push for it. The prediction error disappears. The brain stops paying. The relationship becomes an energy bill, not an energy source. And here is the part most people miss. Intelligent people update expectations faster. That is literally what intelligence is in computational terms, faster and more accurate updating from feedback. So if you initiate 3 times and the other person is vague, slow, distracted, or only responds when they need something, your brain does not keep hoping for a different outcome. It compresses the pattern into a model. This person does not reciprocate. Once the model solidifies, chasing stops feeling hopeful and starts feeling like self-deception. Think about this for a second. A less analytical person can stay in the maybe zone for years because they are not extracting clean signals. An intelligent person extracts clean signals early. That looks like being picky. It is not. It is efficient learning. But here is where it gets interesting. The moment you stop chasing, people often say you changed. They call you distant, busy, hard to reach. What they are really reacting to is a sudden loss of free social labor. Because chasing is labor. It is scheduling, emotional attunement, remembering details, repairing awkwardness, smoothing friction, providing novelty, generating topics, creating rituals. When you are the smart one in a group, you often become the social engineer without consenting to the job. You become the one who keeps the conversation alive, who notices who is excluded, who translates subtext, who makes the joke that releases tension. You are not just a friend. You are infrastructure. And infrastructure is invisible until it fails. So when an intelligent person pulls back, the group does not think, we should meet them halfway. The group thinks, the vibe is off. They blame your mood because it is easier than admitting they were coasting on your cognitive and emotional output. Now watch the next layer. Now, because this is the one that quietly breaks people. Intelligent people tend to have higher trait conscientiousness in the domains they care about. That means if they say they will do something, they do it. If they commit, they follow through, and they bring that ethic into relationships. If I care, I show up. The problem is that many friendships are not built on ethics. They are built on convenience, proximity, shared environment, and social momentum. School friends, workplace friends, friend group friends. Those bonds are not fake, but they are not moral contracts either. They are ecological arrangements. So you walk into a convenience-based friendship with a commitment-based nervous system, and you keep getting hurt. Not because people are evil, because you are playing a different game. This is game theory without the math. And you are acting like friendship is a repeated cooperative game with long-term memory and reputational consequences. Many people are treating it like a series of short rounds where the goal is not mutual investment, but momentary comfort. Do we feel good right now, yes or no? And that is why intelligent people often feel confused. They think, if I am consistent, if I am supportive, if I show loyalty, the relationship should deepen. But the other person is not optimizing for depth. They are optimizing for ease. Here is the mechanism behind this: cognitive load. Deep friendship requires attention. It requires holding a model of another person in your mind that updates over time. What do they fear? What do they want? What are they becoming? What do they avoid? What do they need? What is the story behind their behavior? That is mentally expensive. And most adults are saturated. Work, phones, family systems, anxiety, constant stimulation. So they default to low-load relationships, surface chat, memes, occasional meetups, low obligation. Intelligent people do not just notice that, they feel it, because they can tell when someone is not actually tracking them as a person. You can feel it in the questions people ask. You can feel it in how quickly they steer the conversation back to themselves. You can feel it when you share something important and it lands like a paper airplane. And if you have ever walked away from a hangout feeling more alone than before you arrived, that is what happened. You did not lack company. You lacked attunement. Now, I want to say something that sounds harsh, but it is clarifying. A lot of friendships are not relationships. They are mutual regulation. People use each other to regulate mood, boredom, stress, self-image. That is not automatically bad. Humans are social regulators, but intelligent people start refusing friendships that are purely regulatory because they can see the transaction. They can see, this person comes to me when they are dysregulated and disappears when they stabilize. Or, they like me as an audience, not as a person. Or, I am their therapist friend. And the moment you see the transaction clearly, you cannot unsee it. That is the curse and the gift. Notice the pattern here. The smarter you are, the faster you detect asymmetry. And asymmetry is the real reason you stop chasing. Not introversion, not arrogance. Asymmetry. Let me make it concrete. There are 3 common asymmetries intelligent people run into. First, initiation asymmetry. You start everything. Texts, plans, check-ins. If you stop, the relationship stops. That is not a friendship. That is you running a newsletter. Second, depth asymmetry. You want to talk about values, decisions, fears, ideas, the architecture of life. They want to talk about updates, gossip, content, complaints. Again, not morally wrong, but mismatched bandwidth. So you keep trying to bring depth, and it keeps bouncing off, and eventually you stop offering depth to people who cannot hold it. Third, integrity asymmetry. You treat small promises as real, they treat them as vibes. We should hang out means I want to feel like a good person right now. Intelligent people hear it literally, schedule it, follow up, and then feel rejected when it dissolves. After enough cycles, you stop chasing because you realize you were interacting with a social placeholder, not a commitment. Now stay with me, because this next part recontextualizes everything. The real pivot is not intelligence. It is metacognition. It is the ability to watch yourself wanting friendship and then question the wanting. Most people chase friendships because the nervous system treats social pursuit like survival. Rejection equals danger. Belonging equals safety. So they pursue even when it costs them dignity, even when it drains them, even when it is clearly one-sided, because the body is screaming, "Do not be alone." Intelligent metacognitive people can interrupt that loop. They can feel the anxiety of disconnection and still choose not to chase. They can say, "This discomfort is real, but it is not a command." That is a massive psychological upgrade. And it comes with a social side effect. You become less manipulable, because chasing is what makes you easy to control. If someone knows you will pursue, they can ration attention and still keep you. Variable reinforcement. The same principle that makes slot machines addictive. Sometimes they respond warmly. Sometimes they disappear. Your brain keeps pulling the lever because the next hit could be the one. This is why certain friendships feel addictive and humiliating at the same time. The highs are real, the lows are confusing, and the uncertainty glues you to the relationship more than genuine compatibility does. Intelligent people eventually identify the schedule. This is intermittent reinforcement. And once you label it, the magic weakens. You stop chasing, not to punish them, but to detox yourself. Now here is a quieter reason intelligent people stop chasing: status contamination. This is nuanced, but listen. Every social circle has an implicit status economy. It is not just money and looks. It is attention, credibility, emotional influence. Who sets the tone? Who gets listened to? Who gets dismissed? If you are intelligent, you often end up with a problem. You see the social game too clearly to enjoy playing it, but you still pay the cost when you lose. So you start protecting your attention like it is currency. Because it is. Attention is the only non-renewable resource you actually feel. You cannot get Tuesday back. You cannot get your mental clarity back after you spend it around chaotic people. And that is the part people do not say out loud. Intelligent people stop chasing friendships because they realize some people are cognitively expensive. Not because they are dumb, but because they are dysregulating, dramatic, inconsiderate, or constantly pulling you into low-resolution emotional storms. Your brain learns, "I have less executive function after I see them." You procrastinate more. You scroll more. You feel scattered. That is not just a mood. That is your nervous system responding to social input like it responds to bad food. Social nutrition matters. Now flip the coin. Intelligent people also stop chasing because they start valuing fewer, higher fidelity bonds. They want relationships where words mean things, where feedback is honest, where silence is not punishment, where humor is not cruelty, where someone can hold your complexity without forcing you into a character. And if you have ever felt like you become a simplified version of yourself around certain friends, you are noticing fidelity. You are compressing yourself to fit their decoding ability. That compression is tiring. After years, you would rather have 2 people who can read you than 20 people who only recognize the mask. But there is one more layer that is almost never discussed, and it is the one that makes intelligent people look aloof when they are actually protecting something fragile. Intelligent people often have a strong internal narrative identity. You experience your life as a long arc of meaning, coherence, and self-authorship. You are building a model of who you are becoming, and friendships either support that model or constantly try to edit it. Many friendships are unconsciously conservative. They want you to remain the version of you they already understand. If you change, they feel destabilized, so they use subtle correction, teasing, minimizing. You are overthinking. You used to be fun. Why are you so serious now? What is happening is not just social friction, it is identity homeostasis. Groups stabilize identity the way bodies stabilize temperature. When you evolve, the group pushes back to restore the old equilibrium. Intelligent people eventually realize that chasing friendship in those contexts means chasing permission to grow, and that is a losing trade, because the more you grow, the more you have to betray yourself to stay digestible. Okay? Here is the midpoint truth that ties these threads together. The reason intelligent people stop chasing is that they stop confusing proximity with reciprocity. Proximity creates the illusion of closeness. You see someone often, you share context, you laugh, you vent, you form routines. Reciprocity is different. Reciprocity is evidence. It is the person moving toward you without being prompted. It is them investing attention when there is nothing in it for them. It is them carrying your inner world, not just consuming your presence. When you start measuring reciprocity instead of proximity, your social life rearranges itself. And yes, it can get smaller, but it gets cleaner. It stops leaking. Now let me give you a framework you can actually use, because otherwise this is just an explanation of why you feel tired. I call it the 3 filters: signal, symmetry, and stretch. Signal is simple. Does this person send clear evidence that they want connection, or do they only emit ambiguity? Clear signal looks like specific plans, follow through, checking in, remembering, initiating. Ambiguous signal looks like we should, reactions without engagement, constant busyness with no rescheduling, affection with no action. Symmetry is the balance of investment, not identical, but fair over time. 1 month you carry, 1 month they carry. If it is always you, that is not friendship, that is management. Stretch is the rare one. Does the relationship stretch both of you into better versions of yourselves? Not through pressure, but through exposure. You become more honest, more thoughtful, and more regulated, more courageous around them. Or do you become smaller, noisier, more performative, more numb? Stretch is the difference between a friend and a social habit. Now here is the payoff. Once you apply these 3 filters, you stop chasing by default. You only move toward people who pass all 3. And that does something powerful to your nervous system. It retrains your baseline expectation of what connection feels like. Calm, clean, mutual, real. And when that becomes your baseline, you stop craving low-grade connection the way you stop craving junk food once you remember what real hunger feels like. Let me be very honest about the trade-off, because this is where people panic. When you stop chasing, there is often a social winter, a quiet period, fewer notifications, less weekend noise. And in that winter, now your brain will try to bargain. It will say, maybe I was too harsh, maybe I should text them, maybe I should be easier. But that bargaining is withdrawal, not wisdom. Your nervous system was used to being pinged by low-quality social reinforcement. When it goes away, you feel the absence as emptiness. If you can tolerate that emptiness without filling it with old patterns, something else becomes possible. You make space for friendships that do not require chasing in the first place. Because the best friendships do not begin with pursuit, they begin with recognition. 2 people notice the same things, value the same kinds of honesty, enjoy the same kind of silence, and effort exists, yes, but it is not begged for. It is offered. Now bring it back to the opening line, because I promised you a resolution. If you have stopped chasing friendships, and that might not be a social failure, it might be a perceptual upgrade. You are seeing asymmetry sooner. You are refusing intermittent reinforcement. You are protecting attention as a finite resource. You are choosing reciprocity over proximity. You are prioritizing identity growth over group comfort. And if that makes you lonelier for a while, it does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you finally stopped paying for connection with your self-respect. So here is the question I want to leave you with. If you stopped chasing tomorrow, who would still be there, not because they needed you, but because they actually chose you? If this changed how you see your friendships, tell me in the comments what pattern you recognized first. And if you want a part 2 on how to build high reciprocity friendships without turning social life into a spreadsheet, say that too. Final thought. The moment you stop chasing, you find out who was walking with you the whole time.